All right, hello. We're going to continue our discussion of boards or consoles. It's a somewhat more formal term, but boards is usually just the term that I use. So let's see if we can jump into this. Good. Now we were talking about broadcast oriented boards last time, mostly boards that would be used in a either a radio station or a television station. And those are the most common type of boards that we see in broadcast-oriented work. There are production consoles, what are called production consoles, that are used for creative audio projects, the recording of music, commercials, and so on. Now, the board that you're looking at in this slide is the board that is in the television studio, in the Performing Arts Center. They can be used in broadcast applications. Radio stations or television stations may have a board like this in the studio where they record commercials or produce commercials. We do make use of these boards. They're not used so much for the on the air, over the air applications. Okay, but for broadcast oriented production, they may be. So this is we're going to look at a video of the board that is in the television studio in the Performing Arts Center.
Hey everybody, it's Phil with Behringer. How you doing today? Welcome to Music Group TV. I want to talk to you today about the XL3200. This is a very cool mixer. It's 32 inputs, 4 buses. It's got Xenix mic preamps and British style EQs, and it's going to be great for a variety of applications, such as live touring front of house sound. It's going to be great for monitors. It's going to be great for house of worship, corporate events, you name it, it's going to work great for you. So let's talk about some of the great features inside. On each of the mono inputs, you have inserts on each one. You have a switch on the back to individually turn on and off phantom power, which means you can use high-grade condenser microphones or dynamic mics, which is handy. So you have your input gain, you have an 80 hertz cut switch for rolling off low-end stuff.
One thing he said there was it has phantom power. And remember when we talked about microphones, we said that condenser mics either require a battery supply or phantom power that comes from the board. So that's what he's talking about there. This is an example of that. You could use a condenser mic, and in television production, we very often do use condenser mics because the lavalier or the clip body mics, lapel mics, are condenser mics. But that's what he's talking about with the phantom power. Another thing he may mention in this video, and we will talk about it later with the production board, as you see, everything is in a vertical line. Every channel has a variety of controls in a vertical line. And so every different channel can be set differently. And that's not true of a broadcast or on-air type board that we were talking about before. Every one of these channels can be set completely differently from every other channel.
You also have a British style EQ with 2 semi-parametric sweepable mids in there. Underneath that, you can switch the EQ in and out if you want to. If you want to just bypass it, you're free to do so. Underneath that, you have 6 sends: monitor sends, aux sends, effects sends. 4 of those are actually switchable pre or post fader, so it's nice to have that end of town taken care of. Underneath that is your usual suspects of pan, mute, solo, fader, and which subgroup that you want to send it to, or just sending stuff right to the 2 mix. So that takes care of the mono channels. So you have 4 stereo channels that are included, and what's different about this from the mono is that you actually have mic input gain, you have line input gain, you have a 4-band fixed EQ, and then the rest of the suspects are the same. You have the EQ switch in and out, you have your aux sends, your pan, your mute, your solo, your faders, and your bus assignment.
I'm going to stop it there. This is a really nice piece of equipment, maybe more than really is needed for television production, in particular at college level, but a very nice piece of equipment and capable of a lot of things that likely we would not use it for. And as with a lot of the videos that you see when we talk about audio, a lot of the emphasis is on music production. The Mackie mixer is a production console that is a very well-known piece of equipment, has been around forever, and that's it. And you may have seen one of these, and if not, you probably will. And it is very much like the board we just looked at, the one that is in the television studio. It's smaller and it's more portable and can be carried around and used in remote type situations. But again, you see the inline function here where you have these a variety of controls that are possible on each individual channel. And again, that is not possible on a on-air broadcast type board. And let's see, do we have something else on the Mackie? Yeah, we have a little video on the Mackie mixer. It's a very well-known, popular piece of equipment.
This mixer is the Mackie Micro Series 1402 VLZ. It's a 14-channel mic and line mixer. Now, this particular unit has some interesting features, and it's basically got 6 microphone inputs, and that's the important thing to most recordists. Each one of those has got phantom power if required, and there's a global phantom power switch on the back, so it's 48 volt phantom power on each input, balanced inputs with XLRs. Each channel's also got its own line input, that's here, and then a low cut switch which you can put in, and that will knock out frequencies below 75 Hz. Trim control for obviously setting the gain of the channel, and then auxiliary sends 1 and 2, which can be effects, or one of them can be pre-fade if you wish. You can select either way for effects, or if you go pre-fade you can use that for monitors. A simple EQ system here with high, you can hear that, mid, fixed frequency mid, and low shelving filter there.
So again, he can set those levels. He can set those equalization effects on each one of those channels separately. So each channel could be set up differently than the channel next to it. And we'll continue. The inline layout we've been talking about. Each channel strip contains input and output routing, monitoring, controls, and the controls operate somewhat independently, actually quite independently. There's also a patch bay in the back that allows audio to be routed in and out to any location in the system. Typically with these production consoles, the routing and patching of one source into another location is a lot easier than it is with one of the broadcast-oriented boards that we were talking about before. So there's more versatility here. It's easier to change the configuration of the board than it would be for a broadcast type board. The pan control, I mean, again, you have these controls that are available for each channel. Pan control allows positioning of a channel between the left and the right channels in a stereo recording. By the way, you have that in Adobe Audition as well. Pan control, left and right. Equalization, boosts or cuts certain frequencies to emphasize the bass or the treble tones. You heard that in the video that we just looked at a moment ago. And I would say if you're not experienced, the pan and the equalization can do as much to spoil a recording as they do to improve it. And probably best to leave things just in the center position. You can experiment with it on your own time, so to speak, but there's the risk of experimenting just for the sake of experimenting and making things not as good as they would be otherwise, rather than improving recording. So metering. being able to see audio. And of course, we also can see audio when we're working in digital audio, say with Adobe Audition, and you see the waveform that has been recorded. But meters allow us to measure the amplitude or the loudness of the audio, and it's very important to do that. Like pilots who learn to fly by their instruments, audio producers must use the meters, not necessarily a VU meter. That's a bit old-fashioned, although they're still around. But you need to go by what you see on the meters. Studio monitors cannot, will not allow you to judge audio levels accurately. What you're hearing on the monitor it is not necessarily what is going through the board. And what is going through the board is going to be reflected on the meter. The monitor may be turned up high or it may be turned down low, and that really has no effect on what is actually going through the meter or going through the board at that time. Audio levels are adjusted by first observing the meters and then setting the level accordingly. There is an old-fashioned VU meter, and a VU meter has two scales. Notice I can kind of point here. I'll be pointing at my own screen. But there is the VU scale, which is on top, and it goes from 20 all the way up to 0, and then in red, 1, 2, and 3. And then also has a percent scale that you see there below the top scale. And notice that 0 dB is equal to 100%. And the lower scale is in percent. And then 0 dB is the same as 100%. Let's look at a VU meter video here. So again, you see the VU scale up top, and then you see the percentage scale on the bottom, and you see that 0 VU is equal to 100%. So this is not measuring, by the way, decibels. It's in what's called volume unit scale. Now, we'll talk about this in a minute. That needle swinging back and forth is one of the reasons why the VU meter is considered somewhat out of date. It's kind of giving you an average reading of audio level. The ideal position on a VU meter is that 0 VU reading or 100%, but of course you can't hold it there because it's going to swing back and forth. But ideally you're shooting to have it as close as possible around that 0 VU or 100% reading as much as possible. Oh dear, we lost the page, but we'll get it right back. Again, ideally the reading should be as near 0 VU or 100% as possible. If it goes above 0 consistently, if it stays, especially if it stays in that red scale, you're in danger of distorting the audio or clipping. Audio below negative 15 VU or 20% is of basically no practical value. If you're just barely making that needle move, and you would be there around that 20% mark there, basically you're not putting out any usable audio, significant audio. Audio that hits plus 3 VU all the way over to the right is called gone, and that will be very distorted, and that's called clipping. And you can actually hear that needle hit the far side over there when it's really overdriven. So we don't want to do that. Manufacturers do build headroom into boards so that occasional peaks into the red do not cause distortion. But if you're staying around 2 or 3 in that red area, probably not good. VU meters, again, show average peaks, cannot always show instantaneous peaks. Now, what we see more of today are digital meters. These are also known as peak meters and electronic bar graph meters. Peak meters display the signal peaks, the maximum signal level, as opposed to the average level on a VU meter. The meter in Adobe Audition there at the bottom of the screen is a peak meter, and you will see a thin line, a mark indicating what in the recording that you're making right now, what is the peak volume that you have hit. And then it'll show the instantaneous measurement of the audio at this very moment, but it'll also indicate each time where the peak audio has been. And this is best for digital recording. It is calibrated in decibels, and again, it has 0 dB is the highest possible reading, and generally we want to stay away from 0 dB. Electronic bar graph meters use an LED display, and they show sound levels almost instantly. Really, in my mind, not a lot of difference between peak meters and the bar graph meters. The readings are from green to yellow to red. They can be marked in various scales, maybe marked in a VU scale or the peak scale, which is in decibels. The image on the right side is a bar graph meter, but when we're working with Adobe Audition, we're working with peak meters. So here's a little video on digital meters.
In this video, we're going to take a look at the custom LED meter on the Convert 2. If you're not already familiar with the dangerous Convert 2, check out this overview video that we did here. This custom meter was specifically designed for the Convert 2. Aside from looking great, it's got some really awesome features that you're going to want to know about. One of the most important features is the peak over average function. This means that you can see your RMS level and your peak level all at the same time. If I play a track, you can see that these green and orange segments show my RMS level, where this red LED up here is showing my peak level.
So I wanted to catch that before it changed, cut to the next image. So this is the peak level that I was showing. You see it's still below, even though they indicate it in red, which is a little disconcerting to me. It's still below 0 dB, which is where we want to stay away from, especially staying in that area. But this is the maximum signal that they have sent, and in the current piece of audio that they're working on. And then where the yellow is here, the top of the yellow, that is at that moment, that is where the audio would be. But the red line in this particular one, this LED meter, indicates the highest level in this particular recording or this particular piece of audio.
Not only is it like having 2 meters in one, but since we all have to participate in the loudness war, this is the ideal meter for trying to get loud tracks without clipping. Speaking of clipping, if you take a look at the edge of the meter over here, there's a section called Over. This is another custom feature that we implemented. Anytime you have 3 consecutive samples that cross the 0 point, this indicator will light up orange for about half a second. If you're wondering why we chose 3 samples, it's because that's the maximum number that a CD pressing plant will allow.
Okay, so again, he's talking about here avoiding distortion, not pushing it all the way, and they have in this particular piece of equipment, they have a different way of measuring that than what is in Adobe Audition, but the concept is the same. You want to stay away from 0 dB. You might touch it and not cause much harm, but as he says, 3 samples hitting 0 dB, and there's an alarm that comes up. 3 sample, not much. So he's basically saying the same thing that I'm telling you and trying to convey to you. All right, so we'll leave it at that. We've got some more that we could talk about, but I think we'll let it go at that on boards and consoles and how we route the sound and manage sound. And thanks, and we'll see you next time.